Greetings, adventurers, and welcome back to the Den of the Drake. Other dragons hoard gold, while I hoard internet cringe. Guess who just got back from Gen Con? This guy, yeah! Among the 70,000 nerds who invaded the city of Indianapolis, I was incognito. Yeah, it turns out when you put anime, alcohol, and shiny math rocks in front of the geekiest of the population, even a 1,000-pound cartoon reptile can roll a stealth check to subtly fulfill his chaotic evil desires. Only problem is that I am also among the geekiest of the population, and there was a deal on Gwent, and Warhammer minis, and the aforementioned math rocks and alcohol. So yeah, I'm really regretting the whole hoarding cringe and not gold thing right now. But before I begin sobbing violent tears of regret into my empty wallet, why don't we serve up an RPG horror story grab bag today? That's right, I'm powering through my hangover and serving up the goods. You're welcome. The first story I have for you today stars a player who had the audacity to break the first rule of D&D, which is that the DM can date any of the players at any time, regardless of petty little things like, consent. And if you didn't pick up on the sarcasm, I have a crypto coin I'd like to pitch to you. Now, without any further delay, let's go ahead and dive right into the horrifying world of r/RPG horror stories. Enjoy. Story number 1 comes to us from Reddit user Impossibly Probable 59 and is titled How I Got Kicked Out My First D&D Group for Refusing to Date the DM. So at the time this story took place, I was in high school. I, 16 female, was approached by a guy, 18 male, asking if I wanted to join his D&D group. After he overheard me talking to a friend about D&D. I went to a small school, so I knew most people, and he seemed pretty harmless. It was a group of 6, including me and the DM. They were all 17 or 18, and I was the only girl in the group. We played at the DM's house, and I didn't see any crazy red flags initially. After a few games together, things got weird. The party were interrogating a woman. I can't remember exactly why, but it was something related to a smuggling ring. And everyone was insisting that my character be the one to do the interrogation because I was the only girl, and it would have been weird for them to do it. When I tried persuading the NPC to give up the information we needed, she refused, and the DM told me that she wouldn't give up any information unless we tortured her. I told him that I really didn't want to do that, and that he said that I was being a bad player for disrespecting him as a DM. Everyone kept pushing me, and I ended up excusing myself from the table, and the DM eventually moved on and let someone else do the rest of the interrogation. That was the first major red flag that I wouldn't enjoy playing at the table, but I really wanted to play in a game, and I was an anxious teenager who really wanted friends who shared my interests. So I persevered. Apart from this, there was a lot of small moments that made me feel uncomfortable. Male NPCs hit on my character every other session, and the DM would not stop trying to get me to describe myself harming people. This wasn't just him wanting realistic combat, as he didn't ask anyone else this. At this point, I'm convinced it was some sort of kink. I told him multiple times that I was uncomfortable with that level of graphic violence, and he would back off for a while, only to do the exact same thing the next session. The DM's mom started inviting me to stay for dinner after games, which I thought was very kind of her. My home life wasn't great, so it was nice to have an adult who was nice to me. Turns out she was only nice to me because she thought I was dating her son. After a few months of weekly games, the DM asked me to stay behind after our game and asked me on a date. I was completely stunned. I was very open about being a lesbian, and I had no idea why he thought I would be even remotely interested in him. I told him that I didn't like him like that and tried to leave. Then he told me that if I didn't agree to go on a date with him, he would kick me out of the group. I asked him, "Did you only invite me to this group to hit on me?" And this man literally said, "Yeah, why else would I invite a girl?" I ditched the group immediately after that and didn't play D&D again for 2 years. I picked it up again this year, and recounting this story to my new group reminded me of how messed up it was. End of story. Damn, homie really missed the memo that women earned the right to play D&D without having to suffer through a shitty meal at Olive Garden with the DM. How do you think this guy's gonna react when he finds out they can vote too? Oh, the horrors of the modern world, am I right? Nah, but for real, this behavior is beyond inappropriate. Not to mention the fact that the age difference is weird, to say the least. But if you need me to tell you what's wrong there, then we got some bigger problems. items. Now, it may sound kinda dumb, but there is a level of power imbalance that's inherent in D&D that works in the DM's favor. They're the ones handing out loot, determining the consequences of rolls, determining the direction of the narrative, and are kinda the whole reason the game exists in the first place. And if I've learned anything about the human condition, it's that people have a tendency of letting even the most microscopic amount of power end up going to their heads. Exhibit A, this knuckle. Look, I don't know what kind of logic you're following here, but if the exchange rate for running a D&D game is weird kink roleplay and a free girlfriend, then I am getting severely taken advantage of by my players. Do better, guys. Yeah, hitting the road harder than fat celebrities have been hitting the Ozempic bottle was definitely the right move. Even if the DM wasn't the type of guy to point at you and scream, "Woman!" The environment was one that made you uncomfortable. And how the hell are you supposed to engage in hijinks if you can't even feel safe in the space? One cannot shenanigans under these conditions. Speaking of not feeling safe, our second story really amps up the whole being harassed thing to a whole new level. So viewer discretion is certainly advised because this one gets, less than wholesome. Yeah, let's go with that. Buckle up, everyone, because the Gooners have arrived. Story number 2 comes to us from a throwaway account and is titled, "My Gooner DM Turned My Character into a Sex Toy." So, this is a bit of a weird one. A couple of years ago, I agreed to join this online game that my friend was in, as they'd recently lost a player and were looking for someone to replace them. I was free at the time, and I wanted to play, so I agreed, and after speaking briefly with the DM, everything seemed fine. They all lived within about an hour by car. I needed a flight or a long train to see any of them. Now, very important thing to note here, at the time of me joining this campaign, I was 17 years old. My friend was 19, and the others who I didn't know were around 19 to 24, with the DM being 26. I did at no point hide my age, and we checked in with everybody that it would be okay for me to join, and that the campaign would be suitable for me to be in. When it came to making my character, I read through the lore that the DM had provided and decided that I wanted to play a half-drow, as there was a faction composed of drow outcasts that she would fit in well with. People who, like her, didn't typically fit into the typical society. She was going to be an agent of this faction sent to the city the campaign was in, working against a corrupt drow businesswoman who was attempting to spread her influence within the city. Although the DM initially allowed this, he came back 2 days before the first session that I was supposed to be in, and said that I had to make a new backstory. The faction didn't allow half-breeds, he said, even though he said it was fine earlier, and told me to make something else. I tried to stick vaguely close to what I wanted originally, and now my character had lost her parents after the drow businesswoman, and now also Loan Shark had sent her thugs to beat them down for money, going too far and killing them. And my character was there for revenge. This also got approved and then vetoed hours before the session, and I was given a new backstory by the DM to use. My character lived in a small village, and when she was young, her village was attacked. Everyone was either killed or rounded up as a survivor and taken into slavery by bandits. At the bandit camp, my character was made to watch as her mother and sister were assaulted by the bandits and sold off, with my character being kept as a special gift. When a knight came across the bandit group, he slaughtered them all. And when my character thought she was saved, he revealed that he was actually a servant of a lord of the city here to collect her. The lord was the man that the bandits worked for, and he had them killed to cover his tracks. My character is brought to him and branded as his slave. She is forced to grow up as his servant and also his, companion. She quickly forgave him for using her, even though she was quite underage, and came to love him because it actually felt good. In the present, the party are looking into something the Lord is associated with, so he sends my character, his servant, who I was directed to play as loyal and in love with him, to infiltrate the party as a spy and protect him. I did not write any of that backstory myself. I did not want to play that twisted version of my character, but I was told that it was either that or I wasn't allowed to play. The DM got into a voice call with me and even got my friend into it as well, where they both pressured me into agreeing and playing this character. Very shortly after, the session began, and I realized something is odd about my character sheet. My items have all been changed, and my character's name has been changed as well. Her name was Avalashar, and it had been changed to Ash. I changed it back, thinking that maybe the DM had just shortened it, but all my items and spells were still different. At the end of my first session with the group, the DM berated me before the rest of the group for my poor behavior. He said that I was being rude, unfriendly, and I was constantly trying to gaslight the other players, and that if I didn't get my act together, there would be serious repercussions. Reminder, I'm 17. And this is a 26-year-old man, and the rest of the people are men, mostly in their early 20s, all laughing at me. I was only playing the character that I was coached. I don't know how I was gaslighting people. I wanted to drop out immediately, but my friend guilt-tripped me into continuing to play with the group. I was stupid, and I shouldn't have, but I wanted to please this guy, and it was stupid. Less that's said about him, the better. The next session was even worse than the first. Once again, my character's name, equipment, and spells had all been changed again. This time, though, her character art had been changed as well. Avalashar was a scrawny girl with choppy hair that she cut herself with a dagger and a cocky smirk. She didn't have big proportions that people would find attractive. She'd be considered below average. She talked a big game, maybe a little bit too big, and could slip into places that most people couldn't. Yet my token was completely different. The DM, between sessions, maybe even before the first session, had commissioned art of my character and essentially turned her into a sex doll. Blown up lips, bedroom eyes, long silky hair, massive breasts. Her armor was completely gone, and instead she had what I can only call a stripper dress and heels. This session, the other party members also started hitting on me in and out of character. I left the session at the end, blocked everyone, and have repeatedly blocked my friend who kept making new accounts to try and talk to me. It was incredibly gross and disgusting. I've never felt so uncomfortable before in my life. I've been extremely picky about my D&D games since. If you have a gut feeling about a group, just follow it. Edit. After talking with people in the comments, I wanted to add some further clarification. When I say that people were hitting on me in and out of character, they were trying to elicit sexual favors from my character and wanted me to roleplay it with them either in front of the group or in a private call. Since I joined and before playing in any session, they wanted to all meet up for an IRL session. With how they acted towards me in sessions, as well as things the friend who invited me to play had said, I strongly believe they were intending to assault me and play out these scenes that they were trying to get me to do for the campaign. So yeah, not the greatest people. End of story. Hey, DM, can I use my turn to cast Power Word Wood Chipper? Shame. Shame on these people and their descendants for the next 7 generations. Poor behavior, he says. You want to know what's poor behavior? Being a broomer is an A+ example of poor behavior. Now, I can't say the real word because YouTube will show up at my house and beat me with a sock filled with quarters, but I'm sure you can figure out basic rhyme schemes. Hot take, I feel like we've been way too complacent with everything becoming overtly sexual at all times, and shit like this is the consequence. There are people who can't even play Dungeons and Dragons without their bits getting jimmied being their top priority. How can an entire group of grown-ass men behave like this and not even for a split second consider that their carnal pleasures might be coming at the expense of another person? Call me naive, but I would have hoped that at least one of these creatures would have taken a moment to reflect on what the they were doing. Maybe they're all too sociopathic to have the thought of, that's another person, be enough to stop them. But how about the thought of, that's a child? It really says a lot about the culture of excess that we've built for ourselves when things like eating and sexual drive have transitioned from being things we did to survive into literal addictions that actually hinder our ability to live fulfilling lives. If you let food control every decision, you'll become fat and rot your body. But if you let sexual urges control every decision, you end up rotting your brain and your morals. That's right, you heard it here first. Gooning is the obesity of the soul. And these should go on a diet, preferably one consisting of broken glass and regret, but that's just my opinion. I am so disgusted that you had to deal with all that, OP. I can only imagine the sense of violation and betrayal you might have felt when you finally realized that someone who you thought was your friend was trying to feed you to these weirdos. I don't know anyone who wouldn't have a sour taste in their mouth about D&D after experiencing this, even though this is not at all reflective of what the culture and the hobby is like. Hell, if I stepped on a landmine my first time visiting IHOP, I would probably switch to Waffle House, even though everyone knows that the likelihood of violence is much higher in that establishment. But while we're on the subject of breakfast food, why don't we get the taste of this story out of our mouths with one final serving of cringe, yeah? Story number 3 comes from Reddit user CreativeOkra7898 and is titled Politely Ask Player to Tone Down the Silliness. He rage quits and calls me ableist. I have a longtime friend who is a goofball, to put it mildly. He knows I've been into RPGs for a long time and has been trying to play with me for the last few years. All attempts have been a bit disastrous. First attempt, he doesn't pay attention and makes jokes the entire time. Second attempt, he quits the week before the first session. And the third attempt, he quit mere hours before the session. Fourth attempt, he shows up to 2 sessions, argues with the DM about the lore, and randomly decides his character's racist against gnomes because another player is playing a gnome. Then he gets sick and announces that he is quitting the campaign. For some reason, he believed that if he missed 1 session, he would get kicked out, so he just preemptively quit. I know saying all this makes him sound bad, and it makes me sound monumentally stupid for giving him a 5th chance. That's because I am monumentally stupid. There's an RPG I've been wanting to start a campaign of for a while, and he knows this. Once I finally got the chance to start it, I told him, but I emphasized, hey, this is going to be a serious horror campaign. I know you feel bad about messing up all the other times you tried to play, and I want to give you another chance. But you need to be sure you are ready to be serious for the serious campaign. If that doesn't interest you, it's totally okay to miss out on this one. And I would rather you tell me now that you can't do it than have you drop out later. He assures me many times that he has learned his lesson and can be serious for the serious campaign. Later, he told me that he thought being serious meant paying attention to what's going on. You know, the bare minimum. So the first session, he's still being goofy. It can be kind of annoying, but whatever. We're just starting and he's getting used to it. He asks if he's doing a good job. I say, yeah, sure, because he's giving me a look of, please give me approval. 3 sessions in and he's still being ridiculous, making edgy jokes and taking nothing seriously. The characters take a road trip and he spends 10 real-world minutes yelling about how he wants to stop for McDonald's, acting like a literal toddler. The other players trust him so little to talk to NPCs that at one point another PC puts a hand over his character's mouth. Not in real life, of course, he just narrates it. To get him to stop him over, he spends several minutes making loud, exaggerated noises of him muffled screaming into his hand. To the point that I have to tell him to stop because it's making it hard to hear the other PC who's actually talking. At the end of the session, he asks the other players if he's being too annoying in the same, please give me approval tone. I can tell that they're a little uncomfortable, but because it's not a big deal and they're nice guys, they say, yeah, he's annoying, but in a funny way. I spend a while trying to think if I should bring it up to him, how I should bring it up to him, and if it's even worth bringing it up at all. Clearly, the other players aren't that uncomfortable with it, or they probably would have said something at this point. So maybe I'm the problem for expecting better. This was the campaign I've been dreaming of for over a year. Maybe I'm idealizing it too much. Of course, it's not going to be perfect. Eventually, I decide to send him a message, and I spend a good amount of time making sure it's as polite and non-aggressive as possible. I use I feel sentences, the Dear Man technique, every healthy communication strategy I know to be clear that I am not mad at him. This is a problem that we can fix together, and I'm here to support him in making the necessary changes. At first, he responds somewhat okay. I can tell he's mad, but at least he's hearing me out. Again, I make clear that it's not a big deal. I'm sorry I didn't bring it up earlier. I just want this to be fun for everyone. I am pretty satisfied with the way the conversation turns out, so hooray for communication. Then the next day he texts me, how are you? And I know a shitstorm is coming because he only ever asks me how I am if he wants to tell me about his problems. Red flag in retrospect. He says he wants me to kill off his character, and I get ready to assure him that either he can continue playing this character or the game as a whole, and we can work through this. I did not expect him to respond that he no longer wants to be friends. He says that I clearly hate him and that it's ableist of me to say that he's not being serious because it's his mental illness's fault that he acts that way. I don't know what mental illness he thinks is causing him to make dick jokes. He says to never contact him again because I asked him to tone down the craziness. Now that the shock of losing a friend has passed and I've stopped blaming myself, it's really hitting me how absurd this entire situation is. What the actual happened? Why was I even friends with him so long in the first place? Genuinely, what the End of story. So yeah, this guy pushed me down the stairs, banged my mom, found the password to my Twitter account and posted a bunch of slurs, stole my dog, and spray painted a dick on my front door. Anyway, I've decided to give him a 5th chance of playing D&D with me. I'm joking, of course, but the sentiment is still there. Look, I totally get the appeal of being a goofy goober at the D&D table. It's like the main way I like to have fun when playing RPGs. I make characters almost exclusively around their ability to get up to no good, and create memorable moments for me and everyone else sitting at the table. So yeah, basically I've pioneered the being a dumbass as a service business model. Now I haven't made a goddamn dime off it, which is just more evidence that my players don't appreciate me enough, but I digress. I cannot understate how important it is to understand 2 things. The first is being able to understand where your chosen dumbass falls on the funny/annoying spectrum without the input of others. Because like OP said, it's rare that people will straight up tell you that your character sucks, because most people just want to keep the peace. A good rule of thumb is to ask yourself, would I enjoy being on the other side of this guy? I don't know about you, but sitting next to a guy who is literally screaming into their hands for minutes at a time would make me want to make a new hole in the wall shaped like that guy's head. The second is to be hyper vigilant of whether or not they clash with the tone of the campaign you're in. I recognize that just because I have fun with more comedic tones does not mean that my fun gets to override that of all the others. Some people are genuinely there to tell a super intense story that takes itself really seriously, and it's not okay to force an existing space to change for you. That's not how D&D or life works. If you insist on trying to force every square hole to fit your round peg, then you'll quickly realize that the number of holes that will accept your peg inside of them will quickly wither away to 0. And if you thought that was a sex joke, that's your own damn problem. Everyone knows that D&D players don't get laid. But you know who absolutely does? The people sending me fan art. That's right, how about we take a look at this week's Gallery of the Drake. This week's fan art comes from viewer Macho Nacho, who depicts the origin of the Drake. Now, it's already been established in the Drake lore TM that my dad is the bard who slept with the dragon. But we haven't seen what my mom looks like, so Macho Nacho decided to show us. Oh, Mom, I sure hope prison's treating you well.
Paleontology, muscles, and everything cringe.
Hey, honey, what you doing?
I'm bringing our son into the world. He will be a plague upon the world of man unlike anything seen before. He will have an addiction to ketamine, never pay taxes, and worst of all, he will be a YouTuber. Together we shall usher in an age of pure evil.
Oh yeah, that's great, babe. Hey, I'm gonna head out and buy some cigarettes real quick. You just keep doing what you're doing, yeah.
Thank you again, Macho Nacho, for submitting your art. If you'd like to see your fan art featured in Gallery of the Drake, be sure to send it to the email in my About section, or upload it to the official Den of the Drake subreddit, linked in the description. Fan art is my favorite part of doing YouTube, and it means the world to me that I can inspire artists like you to create artwork like this. With the story over and artwork displayed, we're gonna go ahead and wrap up. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and send in your fan art. And if you'd like to support the channel further, my Patreon, merchandise, and GamerSupps affiliate links are in the description. I would like to thank you all for listening, and I hope to see you next time in the Den of the Drake.
Hello, it is me, Drake's mom. I just broke out of prison because I gotta read patron names. Maverick Silverthorn, Karam Archivalds, Cam the Badger, Bro Tater Tot, K9T, Soul Taker 666212, Gobshite, Neri Delbell, Miramo Tau, and Matthew Mulqueenie. Thank you, Gigabards. If Drake asks if you've seen me, no you didn't.
Hey, if you're still here, YouTube thinks that you'd like this video, and I just know that clicking that link will solve all your problems. Maybe.